Welcome back. Okay, all of you. Okay, in the last video I talked about the options in the database in the SQL server. I showed it actually how to use that options from the SQL server management studio. Now in this video I'm going to show you how those options to be used from the SQL. Now why do I want to use it as with the SQL? Okay, every now and then you cannot go to the being a database administrator or whatever you are, whether a programmer or developer or production, whatever you are. So you cannot go every time to the SQL Server Management Studio to look into the options wherever. You have to remember all these SQLs. You should know SQL, otherwise you are out of job. People usually like to go through the SQL Server. In the initial stage, is good to go through the SQL Server Management Studio and actually set the options, and well and good, not a problem. But being a professional, you should always know the SQL. Let's go and see what the SQL is. Okay, we will start with the same thing again. Suppose if you want to bring the database in the single user mode, okay, how do you do it with the SQL? Firstly, remember single user mode cannot be granted if other users are connected to the database until and unless you use the rollback clause which is included in your SQL. All other transactions except the one changing this option are broken. What does that mean? Means that only the person who is actually using that option will be remain connected, and all the users will get disconnected. What happens to the transaction? The transactions are rolled back. Whatever your work you are doing, other users are doing, that is rolled back. Okay. Single user was often needed to fix the database using the dbcc check db command, or changing the database to read only mode and back again. Suppose if you wanted to change the database to the read only mode, you have to put it in the single user mode. Okay, there are many instances where you will have to actually put the database into the single user mode. We will come to it later one by one. Then there is a restricted mode access to the database to the DB owner, where the DB owner, DB creator and system admin role, only these people are actually allowed to actually access the database. That is restricted user mode. Okay. Then multi-user mode, where all the users who have a proper permissions to get connected to the database or actually allowed to log into the database. Now let's actually use the SQL command to alter the database to the single user mode. I'll just use the command and show it to you. I'm not going to waste your time, just actually typing the command. Let's see. Okay, there we are. This is our first command and I'm going to execute it. Now I have used the alter database pubs, set single user mode go, and it should actually put my database into the single user mode. The query says that the database has been the command has been completed successfully, which means that the database is in the single user mode. Okay. Now as you can see here, the pubs database is in the single user mode. Okay. I have brought the database into the single user mode. Now suppose if I wanted to take this database to the restricted user mode or a multi-user mode, I can always do it by typing another command. Suppose if I want to take it back to the multiple user mode, okay, I can do it with just a little bit change in the SQL. Rest is the same. Only set multi-user. The word changes, one word changes, and you execute a SQL, and there we are into the multi-user mode back again. Okay, click on the pubs data, right click on the pubs data and refresh it, and you will show that the single user mode has gone. Now suppose if you want to check it with the restricted mode, change it to the restricted mode, one word change, and you get it to the restricted mode. Okay, this is not I'm not going to execute this SQL, as I have shown how the database actually gets the mode change. This will also work. Okay, now let's go to some other options. I'm showing you SQL because you should know what the word is. Okay, restricted user, how it is being used. Now let's go to the other commands. Okay, suppose if you wanted to set the database to the single user mode and roll back the incomplete transaction after 30 seconds. Okay, what does that mean? Means all the connections that are been actually connected actually would be given 30 seconds, and all that users except the person who is issuing the command, the transaction would be rolled back, but after 30 seconds. Okay, here is the command. Hold on. This is how actually this is the command that allows you to get to the single user mode with a rollback after 30 seconds. Okay, what happens is that all the users would be get disconnected, but after 30 seconds, and all the transaction would be rolled back. Now let's see what the auto close is. Now when the auto close is enabled, the database is closed and shut down when the lost user connection exists and all the processes are complete. Okay, this is not a good option for the organization. The database should not be shut down unless you want to do a very important changes to the database, because when you start up the database and when you actually shut down the database, again you have to restart the database, which means that the time it takes is very long, okay, to start up the database, and is not usually a good option to do it. It should not be done on the production server. Now let's go to the other option and see how the thing works. Now here is the SQL. This SQL actually alters the database. In this SQL, you can see that the auto database pub set auto close on location is being used. Okay, this is how you use the SQL for the auto close on, and the auto close on actually gets activated. You can set the auto close off if you want to actually if you do not want to use the auto close. Okay, you can select it to the off. Now let's go to the different option. Okay, here are two other options that you can use with the alter database with a single user. Okay, setting the single user, and if you want to do changes, okay, that is rollback immediate, means it doesn't have to wait, and then there is single user with no wait. If any users are connected, they will all get disconnected. Now from now on, let's discuss some other options, that is auto create statistics. Okay, what is auto create statistics? This option actually update the statistics already created for your table. It is important to keep the statistics up to date, especially if your tables have a frequent data insert, update or delete. It improves the performance of the query, which means actually by default it is actually turned on. Okay, you don't have to turn it off. Anyway, but the SQL to turn it off and turn it off is like that. Show it to you. Okay, this is the SQL. Okay, use master go, alter database pubs go, set auto update statistics off and go. That is how you do it. On, keep it on, do not keep it off. It is not actually advisable to keep it off. Okay. Now let's talk about the auto shrink. That is another option in the database. When the auto shrink is enabled, SQL server shrinks the data and the log file automatically. Shrinking will occur when more than 25% of the file has unused space. The database is then shrunk by 25%. However, it will never decrease the original size of the database. What does that mean? I mean, suppose if you created the initial size of the database for 500 MB, it will never be able to decrease from the original size of the database, even if there is a space there. Okay. This option can be used, but it will slow down your performance of the server. Now let's discuss some other option, that is cursor close on commit enable. Okay, what happens is if you enable this option, okay, what happens is once you close the cursor, okay, the transaction will get committed. The default is off. What does that mean is that the cursor once closed, still the transaction, once even though the cursor is closed, okay, still the transaction is not committed. What means that you can actually requery that whole cursor. Okay, the disadvantage is that actually it may lock the tables, and it may actually hinder the other users from accessing the same rows or the tables where the cursor has a lock on it. Okay, remember, only when you say commit or rollback, the SQL server will release the lock. Until and unless you don't say a commit and rollback, the SQL server will not release the lock. Okay, okay, here are the SQL, transact SQL, to actually set the cursor close on commit, on and off. Say it says use master go alter database pubs, set cursor close on commit on go, or you can use off. Okay. Now there is another option that tells that the cursor default is local or global. By default, actually the cursor is global. What it means is that whenever you don't specify whether the cursor is local or global, whatever is the default will be used. Suppose the cursor is global, the global would be used automatically. If you actually set the default to local, then the local would be used. The cursor would be as local. Now the difference between two of them is that the local, when you can, your code would be able to access the cursor, while if it is a global, any connection would be able to access the cursor. Okay. Now the only difference is that you can change it to the word to the global, and that's it. Okay, this is the how you actually set your database recovery mode. Use pub master go alter database pub set recovery mode to full go and bulk lock to. If you are looking for the explanation, please refer to my video that is previous to that. Actually, where I have actually explained it in the when I have shown it with the SQL Server Management Studio. I explained what is the full and what is the bulk locked. Okay, just go and see that video. That's it. I will stop here.